Blue patina over copper B metal coating. Today we're going to show how to create a reactive patina finish over a copper B metal coating on a hydrocal sculpture. Now to begin, we'll apply some copper B metal coating over our dry hydrocal sculpture. Now the copper B metal coating does contain real copper powder, so you want to shake it up really well before you apply it to suspend that copper powder into that acrylic medium. Now the metal coating works over a lot of different surfaces from wood to plastic to stone or plaster here, but it's important anytime you're working with a gypsum material like this hydrocal sculpture that it be completely dry. After we cast this hydrocal sculpture, we let this dry out for about a week before applying this metal coating. And the reason you want to do that, if it's damp when you go to apply the metal coating, you're not going to get as good of a bond to the surface because that moisture inside the sculpture will prevent the metal coating from really soaking into the pores of the plaster. So always make sure when you're working with a porous material like a gypsum material, a concrete or hydrocal, that it's completely dry before you begin the metal coating application process. Now you typically want to apply the metal coating in two layers. The first layer, the base coat, is going to be applied all over the sculpture, and it's going to be followed up by a second coating that will receive the traditional or reactive patina. Now the metal coating can be applied by brush, by sponge, by roller, or by HVLP spray gun. Now for most of us, we're going to be using a brush to apply this to most of our small sculptures or small projects. And when you use a brush, it's important to get rid of any brush strokes that give away the fact that you've brush applied the metal coating. And that's one of the reasons I'm using that dabbing motion. Once I've spread out the metal coating all over the surface of the piece, I like to use that stippling or dabbing motion to remove any of the brush strokes on the surface. And once we've applied that first coating, we're ready to allow that to dry and come back with our second coating. Now, it usually takes drying time on the metal coating, usually takes around 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. It doesn't take very long, especially if you're in a warm, dry work area. And now you're ready for your second coat. Now your second coat, this is the critical step here. In order for a reactive patina to react with the copper in the metal coating, it needs to be wet when the patina is applied. So at this step, your timing is very critical. So what I like to do is brush that on all over, brush my metal coating all over my sculpture, and again stipple out any brush strokes and then immediately spray on the patinas. Now if you're working on a fairly large piece, this particular step can get a little tricky, and that's where it really helps to have someone working with you, and as you're applying the metal coating you can have someone follow along and spray on the patinas right after you finish a section, or you could work with several people applying it at the same time so that you can speed up that application process. But either way, the critical step here is you want to apply your metal coating, and while it's still wet, that's the moment that you need to apply that cold patina to get that reaction to occur. And now we're ready to spray on our patina solution. And the patinas we'll be using are reactive patinas or traditional patinas, and we'll be using the powder blue and Tiffany green to get kind of a funky blue color, kind of a funky cold patina. And once we spray these on, we'll have to allow them time to react. So the first thing we're going to do is spray on a little bit of the Tiffany green and just give it a light spray all over. And one of the things I like to do is I always like to test my spray pattern off to the side of a piece before I go and just blast it. You want to make sure you get a very nice light mist before you hit your actual piece with the patina. Now we're ready to spray on our powder blue, and the powder blue does contain a powdered oxide that needs to be suspended before you spray it. So make sure you really shake up that powder blue patina before you spray it on. Otherwise, you're not going to get as rich of a blue. Now, once we've applied our blue patina all over, I'm going to go back with the Tiffany green one more time and just give a light spray over the top of the blue. And that just gives us a nice mix of that kind of turquoise green with the powder blue. Now, once you've sprayed on your patinas, it's important to just spray on just enough to get a reaction and then back off and let nature do the rest. Sometimes it can take several hours or even a full day for the patina to really develop. We allowed this piece to sit overnight, and that gave us a really nice blue finish. And you see some greens coming through there as well. And once that has completely dried, we're ready to dry brush a little bit more of the copper B over the top. I like to create a little palette using a piece of foam core or a paper plate and just get a minimal amount of copper B to dry brush with. And you can test that out on your brush and see about how much you've retained on the brush before you use it on your sculpture. And that helps you keep from over applying that copper B metal coating. And you'll notice that we're just taking a very small amount and just putting it on the high points of the sculpture. You want to do that very sparingly, but what we want to do is we're simulating the look of exposed copper coming through that oxide. Actually, the reverse of what's actually happening here. And this would be the same as if you had an old oxidized piece of copper and you abraded it slightly with steel wool or a Scotch-Brite pad to expose the copper underneath. And what we want to do is just carefully go over the high points of the sculpture where it would naturally abrade and just lightly hit it with the brush, and that will give us that illusion of that raw copper showing through on those high points. Now, even though everything is dry up to this point, our copper B base coating and second coating, our patina, is dry to the touch. Since it is a reactive patina, it will continue to react and continue to turn over time. So once you get the piece looking the way you want it to look, unless you want what's called a living patina, where it does continue to change over time, it's important that you seal in that final look that you want. So once we get our final coating done the way we like it, with a little bit of the copper dry brushed over the top to get that kind of antique copper look, we're going to seal this all in using some of the Clear Guard sealer. Now, it's important that our oxide isn't shiny. Typically on a sculpture like this, you want it to be matte. So we're going to use the Clear Guard matte to seal this in. And the reason we're using the Clear Guard versus just like a regular Krylon crystal clear spray is Clear Guard contains a corrosion and UV inhibitor, and that keeps the patina staying true to the color that we have now. So we don't have that shifting or oxidizing more over time. We seal that in with the Clear Guard. Now, we don't show it here, but it's also important to seal the base of the piece. Once you've coated the entire piece with about 2 coats, it's also a good idea to seal the base of the sculpture. Since this is porous, you could have moisture migrate up through the sculpture and in through the back of the patina. So it's always a good idea to seal the complete piece, including the base. And there you have the basic process of a blue patina over copper B metal coating. And of course, the metal coatings and patinas are available on our web store at brickintheyard.com.